I thank the distinguished representative of Bangladesh for his statement, and I now give the floor to the distinguished representative of Israel.
Madam Chair, once again, we are all gathering here in this esteemed forum for this annual ritual, one that focuses on an annual activity with little purpose, wastes valuable time, and depletes scarce resources that would be much better utilized to actually help this organization in fulfilling its mission. All of us are here just so we can discuss a one-sided, biased report, a report that is the product of an illegitimate, prejudiced mandate drafted by those who come to the table with a predetermined and discriminatory agenda against Israel and probably differs little from the previous year's version or that of the year before that or the year before that. Every year it's the same. Paper wasted, translation services provided pointlessly, and the time of so many of us squandered, and all this to produce a collection of unsubstantiated rumors and baseless allegations lacking supporting facts. It is unfortunate to see that UN funds are spent year after year on this futile endeavor. It would be one thing if the work of the committee or this discussion in some way actually added value to the creation of the conditions required to reestablish a meaningful dialogue and bilateral negotiations between the parties to end the conflict. But nothing can be further from the reality. Madam Chair, let me tell you what you won't find in this report. You will not find any reference to all the ways that Hamas, the internationally designated terror organization, has terrorized and imposed its brutal policies on the people of Gaza. Barely a hint of this in the report. No mention of how it diverts humanitarian aid for its malign activities. The report also has the audacity to criticize the whole Israeli judicial system. All this while Israel has always fervently strived to protect the rights of all of its citizens, Jews and Arabs alike, and enshrine these rights in its Declaration of Independence. Let me remind this auspicious forum that there's only one place in the Middle East where there is fair, equal, and open access to the legal system. That place is Israel. There is only one democracy in the region where all persons have a right to appeal to courts and challenge the decisions of governments. That place is Israel. Also missing from the report is the fact that Israel is taking significant steps to help the residents of the Gaza Strip, even as it deals with deep and tangible security concerns, including regular rocket attacks on its citizens and ongoing attempts by Hamas to seize goods and raw material needed for the reconstruction of Gaza. Hamas is looting humanitarian supplies, using them instead for the construction of terror tunnels and military buildup. Hamas cynically uses people entering Israel for critical medical treatment for the same purpose. There is barely any reference to the impact that the Palestinian Authority's sanction has on the daily life in Gaza, especially its impact on the electricity crisis in Gaza. Madam Chair, since the report neglects to provide any positive information with regard to Israeli practices, let me tell you about Israel's efforts to aid the Palestinians with a focus on the Gaza Strip. Israel has been working closely with the United Nations to facilitate the mechanism for reconstruction of the Gaza Strip. Renovation and construction of over 100,000 houses have been completed. 817 public projects have been authorized by the Gaza Reconstruction Mechanism, out of which 160 have already been completed and 488 are under construction. Thus far, Israel has facilitated the transfer of over 6 million tons of building materials for the reconstruction mechanism, including 4.7 million tons of aggregates, over 1 million tons of cement, and 190,000 tons of iron. These materials are intended for numerous projects funded by the international community. Allow me then to enlighten this esteemed forum with some details of just one day. 78,365 people entered Israel from the West Bank, including 53,295 workers and 9,711 who entered for humanitarian reasons. 13 ambulances entered Israel for medical purposes. 286 tons of agricultural produce was exported from Gaza through Israel. 16,908 tons of supplies and goods entered Gaza through Israel on 532 trucks. All types of food and food ingredients, as well as consumer and other goods, enter the Gaza Strip without any restrictions. The only prohibitions implemented are on those that are routinely exploited for terrorist purposes. Despite the ongoing threat posed to the citizens of Israel from rocket attacks launched from Gaza by Hamas, Israel has demonstrated its commitment to economic policies to improve the humanitarian conditions and standard of living of the civilian population while safeguarding the basic security needs of Israeli citizens. Let me point out that all this occurs at a risk to Israel's security. Just last week, thousands of special military gloves used to improve one's ability to operate firearms were intercepted as they were stashed in a seemingly innocent shipment of clothing. This is a daily occurrence. Earlier last month, same modus operandi. Smuggling under guise of innocent cargo. This time it was military boots packaged and labeled as slippers for the winter. Madam Chair, as we have noted in the past, we again stress that the report of this so-called investigation lacks any attempt to present the context of the reality of circumstances on the ground in an even-handed and professional manner. No mention is made of the 17 Israeli victims of terror murdered since the beginning of 2017. While attempting to bring examples and tell stories, not surprisingly, the committee ignores the stories of people like the Solomon family. 3 victims, a father Yosef and his 2 children, Chaya and Eldad, slaughtered as they ate their Shabbat meal. The family had gathered together for the Shabbat to celebrate the birth that morning of a new grandson in the family. They were expecting friends to join them when instead, a Palestinian resident of the nearby village of Kubar burst into the house and attacked the family with a knife. How do cases like this escape the eyes of the skilled investigators? Madam Chair, we take note that this year the committee has also deemed it important to relate to the Golan Heights. Yet in this section, there's no mention of what is happening just across the border in neighboring Syria and how this impacts all those who live on the Golan, including the Arab and Druze residents who are justifiably concerned for the welfare of their loved ones across the border who fear the atrocities committed by the Syrian regime. No mention of how mortar fire and gunfire is threatening the safety of all those in the Golan and impeding the conduct of their daily lives. No mention of the significant humanitarian aid supplied by Israel to victims of the ongoing war in Syria, including the treatment of the wounded and sick in Israeli medical facilities. The Multi-Faith Alliance for Syrian Refugees has stated that this steady flow of humanitarian aid is not only helping tens of thousands of war victims in southern Syria and potentially thousands more, but is changing minds and countering generations of hostility, promoting dialogue and understanding between Syrians and Israelis. Reuters reports that some 600 children with disabilities or diseases like cancer and diabetes have been brought to Israel for treatment on top of the roughly 3,000 war-wounded Syrians hospitalized in Israel since March 2013. An additional 1,000 children have been brought to the country for medical exams. Over 360 tons of food, 450,000 liters of gasoline, and 50 tons of clothing have been transferred over the Israeli-Syria border. In less than a year, Israel has transferred around 113 tons of baby formula over the border and 100 tons of clothing and shoes. Has all this escaped the eyes of these expert investigators operating under UN mandate and with UN resources? Madam Chair, Israel categorically rejects the mandate, the committee, and their work, and regrets the waste of valuable resources of the United Nations on this annual circus. We call on member states to put an end to this worthless spectacle and to these futile discussions which only perpetuate the bias against Israel at the United Nations and distance the sides from a substantive dialogue. We call on the countries that believe in peace and dialogue to vote against the resolution that commends the work and express support to this dishonorable committee's mandate, which time and time again has demonstrated that there is not a shred of added value or positive contribution to justify its ongoing activities. Madam Chair, being in New York in November is the best time of the year. Leaves are changing colors and falling to the ground. Pumpkins and turkeys decorate every window and home. And we have just experienced the conclusion of the Fall Classic Baseball's World Series. It is in this context that I feel it appropriate to invoke the name of one of the heroes of this city, the late Yogi Berra, who is renowned especially for his heroics in the World Series. Just across the Hudson River, one can even visit the Yogi Berra Museum. Yogi Berra was admired for his baseball talent, but he was also beloved as an American original because of his unique yogiisms, his unique use of the English language. For as I sit here in this forum, assess the time and the resources wasted, and wonder year in and year out while we partake in this ritual, rather than more constructive endeavors, what immediately comes to mind is Yogi Berra's memorable saying, "It's deja vu all over again." Thank you.
I thank the distinguished representative of Israel for his statement, and I now give the floor